And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the powerhouse that is Naire Blankenberg. She is one of the most globally respected thinkers and innovators from the continent around art, named by The Observer as one of the most influential people in the art world. She founded the Institute for Creative Repair in 2023 to repair individuals, communities, institutions, and places through arts, culture, heritage, and address the challenges of sustainability among cultural institutions in the global South. Previously, she was the director of the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art, and before joining the Smithsonian, Blankenberg was a museum doctor, advising more than 55 cultural projects in 35 cities on 5 continents on all aspects of museological practice. And while your views are your own, they certainly reflect much of what we are carrying in our hearts in this moment. We thank you. Once, we were travelers. Wherever we found water and warmth, we were home. Once, when we knew the ocean's true names, you could send a beat from Indian to Atlantic, Giza to Great Zimbabwe. A scripted message traveled from heart to hand, to drums, to dust, to ears, to village, to kingdoms, songs of divination, songs of destruction. Coded connections contained in clan names and cattle. Cosmic formations and the scars that hold both beauty and tears. Once, we knew that a human being was more than a two-legged consumer, more than a permit or passport holder, more than a slave or child of war. An African in motion is a tangent in time, a multi-dimensional expression of lineage, a collection of talents, mined through survival, made manifest in transcendence. We transcend borders of geography, skin, and mind. We create empires out of empty spaces, create cultures out of chaos and catastrophes. Through turbulence and turmoil, we never stop. Like the flow of our resources, we never stop. Like the tides of our geniuses, we never stop. Like the forces that would divide us, we never stop. Once, a timeline broke like a wave, crashing against the shores of limitations, drawing information superhighways across the limbs of this continent. Her immortal face, an army of colors, the flesh of the young, the wisdom of ancients, the wealth of the womb of the world. Hers is the bread on every table. Hers is the creamy milk of kings. Hers is the fat of fertile lands. Hers is the meeting point of minds reborn. Our borders will melt in each other's mouths. Our pains will find refuge in each other's gods. Our children will find love across each other's borders. Our actions will be judged in each other's songs. In the marketplace, we will be like mothers, measuring cloth, grain, and gold like futures in the mouths of her children. Thank you. So that's my side hustle, like a little thing that I do, you know what I mean? For bookings, you can contact Nyadlala, I'm playing. Speakers, okay, some admin before we have our first panel. Askisi, but this first row was supposed to be empty. I'm very sorry, Sophie. I'm very sorry, Mr. Ambassador. I'm very sorry for your peeps that you are with. We were supposed to leave this row empty and have speakers in the second row. Speakers, can I ask you assembly, if you are not mic'd, please go and get thyself mic'd right now if you are going to be on the next panel or the panel after that, with the exception of the incredible Albie Sachs, because I'm going to call you up right now. Okay, so speakers, second row, speakers in the session before your session. Make sure that you go backstage to a lovely lady named Kyla. She will mic you and make sure that you are sorted before you come back to the stage. Sazwana, makes sense? Thank you very, very, very much. Okay. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite to the stage, after they get mic'd, the members who will be participating in our next panel, and they include Professor Carolyn Hamilton, the South African Research Chair in Archive and Public Culture, Historical Studies at the University of Cape Town. I won't say all that they do. Justice Sachs will say it, perhaps, or maybe they will say it for themselves, or maybe Nairi will say it because she's moderating this panel. But it has Storm Janse van Rensburg, Lekgetho Makola, Steve Kwena Mukwena, Sophia Sanan, and Justice Albie Sachs, an activist, a writer, and a former judge of the Constitutional Court of South Africa. He will be giving us the opening address for this panel, and the panel itself, following his address, will be moderated by Nairi Blankenberg, whom we have just heard from. Justice Sachs, the stage is yours. Sorry. One last thing. We've got translators over there who are working their asses off. I said that because I want to hear them translate it. For those of us who have the privilege of occupying this space, especially if you're using this mic, please make sure that your mouth is visible. They're listening to you. They're also reading lips to get the text accurate as well. Please try, and I'm the most guilty of this because I'm looking at my friend there, the clock. Please try to speak clearly so that they can see you and translate. They're translating in real time. It's hard work, but you know, we love them and we appreciate them, and I needed to say that. Justice Sachs, you are amazing. Enjoy.
And I'm much more comfortable in that role, and I have some somber thoughts to begin with on my mind, and I'd like to dedicate my words to two people. First of all, to that little girl, 5 years old, in the car, saying, "Help us, help us, help us, the Israeli tanks are coming." It was so moving and so deep. I think of her now. I think we all think of her. Her dead body was found afterwards. And the second person, while I'm in a somber mood, is a very, very, very great French person, Robert Badinter, who died last week, who was head of their constitutional court, who was our friend, whose father disappeared in World War II, seized by the Gestapo, never to return, who became a tremendous humanist and internationalist, a pioneer of human rights in its most embracing, inclusive form. He invited me in the early 1990s, when we were still living under apartheid, back in the country, preparing a new constitution, to visit the Conseil Constitutionnel in Paris. And I spent a week in the Palais Royal. I'd never been in a palace in my life. I'd never woken up in a palace. I was treated royally. Why? Because I was a freedom fighter, not because I was a monarch. And he wanted to share French experience in projecting rights for human beings with now the burgeoning human rights dimension in what would be a post-apartheid South Africa. I had helped to draft the ANC Draft Bill of Rights. Now, this was about 1992. And he arranged for 5 members of their constitutional court to go through the text line by line, share comments with me. And he was full of praise, very, very diplomatic, but I felt there was something worrying him. And he the word politesse is a French word for a good reason. There's nothing in English language quite, but very, very delicately said there's one aspect of our Bill of Rights that he felt, does it really belong in a constitution, this grand document? And that was in our social and economic rights. The right to housing included the right to water, to electricity, and to sewage. And he felt that somehow the right to sewage in a grand document, the Constitution, was inappropriate. And I said, Robert, by that time we were on first name terms. In South Africa, nothing divides the nation more powerfully in terms of human dignity than our toilet system. And I didn't realize how prophetic those words would be. It's not in our Constitution now, but Robert Badinter, I remember you as a great friend. You visited our court. In France itself, when you were Minister of Justice, you pioneered the abolition of capital punishment. And you transformed your court from being a very technical court dealing with elections and relations between government by introducing the rights of man, the Great Declaration of the Rights of Man, into the interpretation of the role of the court, and humanized what had been a very rather sterile, ultra-technical, playing around with words kind of a court, into a court that truly looked to the humanity of everybody. So I'm taking this occasion, because we have people from the French embassy here, as a South African who got support and a very, very important time to pay my tribute to Robert Badinter. My presentation is only indirectly a preparation for the panel that will follow. I'll be in the panel equal with the other panelists at a later stage. I'm going to deal with the monuments we created in South Africa to the overthrow of apartheid and ask the question, why were some hugely successful? Why were some phenomenally disastrous? And why were the others could be better, but serve a good purpose? This is a purely personal vision that I'm giving. I'm speaking right out of my lane, on any lane I'm in. Judicial, cultural, I have absolutely no right to say what I'm going to say, and I love saying things that I have no right to say. And I'm going to start with 2 monuments or museums in Cape Town. The first, you've got to start with Robben Island. It's still a wow place. The space, the getting there, the knowledge, the history. It could have been more. We had a dream of Robben Island being a center of reflection, a center for the whole world of people to go and study and paint and make music and converse. We never achieved that. But it hasn't been spoilt. The plans to have a casino and a big hotel and a buzzy, fortunately, weren't followed. It wasn't brought into the money economy as a money-making place in space. So the strength of Robben Island is there. It had some ups and downs in terms of its direction. It was wonderful in the early years when former warders took people on tours and discussed. They humanized, they gave it a strong connection to the tour. It still works, it still functions, it's still there, it's still a great center of memory. The second museum in Cape Town is the museum we're in. And I love it. I love it. It's a small space. It had hardly any resources. It wasn't dominated by great expertise of brilliant thinkers. Very, very simple. the District 6 Museum, it works. I haven't been there recently, but every time I go there, it's simplicity, it's authenticity, it's connection, the simple signs. It doesn't rely on tricks, it doesn't rely on marvelous memory evocations. Maybe it's got special meaning for me because I used to go and have political activities in District 6 in the old days. But to me, it just works, and we've got to draw some lesson from that. Because why does District 6 have such a powerful impact when other projects that were created by brilliant designers with great thought just don't work? So we move up to Kaberga, Red Location Museum. Probably most of you haven't even heard of it. The most brilliant concept, great architecture, and the idea was instead of people going to the museum would go to the people in Red Location. That Museum of the People and Port Elizabeth was the part of our struggle, the zone of our struggle that fought hardest and suffered the most repression in the whole of South Africa. So much storytelling to take place. And a brilliant design. And the architect Joe Noeru using corrugated iron, that simple material representing simplicity but giving it a dignified meaning in South Africa, honoring the stories of the people who fought for our liberation. Wonderful designs, interesting concepts, space for performances. The people burnt it down. They burnt it down. It's become almost a museum to a failed project, and we've got to ask why. And the people were angry because they'd been promised housing as well as a museum. And they got the museum and they didn't get housing, and they felt betrayed. So that connection with the community that even the most brilliant concept and design needs to have if it's going to function was lacking. I move up to Johannesburg. The Apartheid Museum. It's totally artificial. It's not at a site of memory. In fact, it's in front of a casino. It was a condition for the license to go to the casino to have an apartheid museum. Lots of debates and arguments. It could have been awful. It could have been apartheid in the museum itself. Eventually, good leadership, good professionals involved, and it works. It tells a story, and it's effective. I think it's more effective for foreign visitors attending and maybe for South Africans. It lacks a certain emotion, a certain kind of sense of immediacy, but nevertheless, it tells a powerful story in a powerful way. And me, with my arrogance, I give it a good mark. On the edge of Soweto, Kliptown, where when I was a 20-year-old law student, I went where the Freedom Charter was adopted. A magnificent site, the Freedom Charter, which became foundational to our constitutional democracy. And it seemed a most beautiful design, a big square, Walter Sisulu Square, with lovely buildings, and grand meetings would be held there. You go there now, the small museum at the side that had wire figures, including a figure of a 20-year-old Albie Sachs, is overrun. It's become a museum piece itself of failed ambition and endeavor. The buildings are empty. The arches underneath were used by women selling their knitted works and oranges and bananas. It's lamentable, it's sad. And clearly what went wrong was a concept, an idea was imposed on a community without any real connection. I must say I loved the vision that I saw. It fitted into a kind of grand space for a grand moment in our history, and that grand space has now become a derelict and painful space. I move now to Constitution Hill. I have to make a disclosure. I was one of those on the court who, when we were looking for a place for the new Constitutional Court, said, yes, this is where it must be, the old Fort Prison, where, we say with a dubious pride, South Africa has the only jail in the world where both Gandhi and Mandela were locked up. No one else can make that claim. And Robert Sobukwe, and Albert Luthuli, and Fatima Mir, and so many others, Joe Slover, so many others locked up there. And that's where we built our Constitutional Court. And it's powerful. It's powerful. We didn't knock down the old buildings. The buildings are there. They're museums now. The women's jail used for so many conferences and meetings. Number 4, the horrible Number 4, Yvonne Shaka Shaka wrote songs about Number 4. If a black man disappeared, people would go to the mortuary. They would go to the casualty wards, and they go to Number 4 jail, the Bastille, if you like, of South Africa. And that's where our Constitutional Court is. And the court itself has a beautiful art collection. It's a living, lively space with emotion. It's not just a technical space where decisions are made. And many other activities take place. And it works because the old and the new are in dynamic, interactive conjunction all the time. And it's wonderful to see young people going there, the red bus stopping there, the openness. So with no shame at all, I give full marks and more to Constitution Hill. And by the way, I wanted it to be called Freedom Hill, and Arthur Chaskel said, no, there are lots of Freedom Hills in the world. There's only one Constitution Hill. We have that in South Africa. The last place and space, and maybe I'm sure there are people here from Freedom Park in Pretoria, Tshwane. I shouldn't have to be careful about what I say. I'm not going to be careful about what I say. I remember when it was first designated as a memorial site for the people who died in the struggle for freedom, going back over the centuries. It was beautiful to go up there. And you would see the Union buildings at the side, you'd see Voortrekker Monument, and there was a wonderful sense of ancient nature and a connection with our soil, with our rocks, with our greenery. A winding path went up, little light put up at night. It was beautiful, it was evocative. I attended one memorial to John Harris, who'd been executed for the station bomb. There were real tears. It was very emotional. I go there now. You need a permit to get in there. You need a permit to go to the place that honors the people who died fighting for our freedom. It's empty. It's got a powerful building at the bottom with a very interesting, fascinating museum, combining different elements that somehow work. Ancient, prehistoric African, mystical origins of existence, combined with the Freedom Charter and periods that I lived through myself. It's got other spaces, beautifully designed, very elegant, and it's empty. It's got people working there doing excellent work, but it's empty. It's cut off. It's cut off. And I long to see that place opened up. I long to see the people invited. Come with your children, with your picnic baskets. Enjoy a free space in Pretoria. And when you have time, go up to the top of the hill and see our ancestors and predecessors who died in the struggle. So it fails as a museum because it's cut off from the people. But it has enormous potential. If only it could be opened up, if only it could be available so that the energies of the people living in the city and the energies of people coming from abroad can go and feel that openness, that delight, that joy of open space, the heavens, even celebrate at the little springs and rocks that Wally Serotti and others had to give a certain African spirituality to the place. Enjoy the museums, enjoy the rest, but open it up. So here I'm speaking then about who would have thought when we had all those ambitions, we were talking about all those projects, I would one day be an old person reminiscing and giving a scorecard marks to museums now that are decades old. So it's interesting to think of museums as being museum pieces themselves. We've got them in spades in South Africa. We can do much more with what we've got. We can learn good lessons from what we have. And I'd just like to say thank you to the District 6 Museum, because you've shown what's possible to do with limited resources, but with great vision and great involvement of the people. Thank you.